Hello everyone, this is Robert, and I've been doing a lot of organization around the shop still, and I decided to finally dip my toes into Gridfinity. So I have this cabinet and some of this cabinet all organized and pretty, so I wanted to share with you what I've done and also a lot of the things I've learned, because going into this project it was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be, and I definitely learned a lot. And I always like watching shop organization videos. So let me show you what I've done, and then I'll tell you what I learned. This is a little side cabinet that I have next to the Tormach that sits right over there. So this has kind of all my machining tools and some measurement tools and stuff like that. This is actually a side cabinet from Harbor Freight that I've just kind of mounted on wheels. Up in top, we've got kind of the basic measurement tools. I've got my angle gauges, my radius gauges, digital protractor, some little rulers, and some other little bits. And then that one I don't have anything. Here I've got parallels, 1, 2, 3 blocks, some large and small V blocks. This is all the kind of measurement. I've got dial test indicators, spindle square micrometer, and this is an old kit that I got a long time ago. This is an inside micrometer from Starrett, nice old guy. Indicator tips, and then I've got some collets. This is actually a SPI surface finish gauge set, which, you know, one of these things I just kind of picked up from some other tool lots, but has all the different surface finishes, which is kind of cool. Telescoping gauges. Due to the size of these drawers, it's hard to fit everything exactly where I want. And then here I've got some bigger stuff because this is a taller drawer, so all my 5C collets, 5C collet blocks, boring bar heads, measurement weight set, and 246 blocks. So this is primarily my machinist tools, but then I have all my standard cutting tools somewhere else. So first off, I'm really glad I purchased these New Age Products cabinets. This is a 28-inch Pro Series cabinet, 7 drawers, and you can fit so much stuff in here. So here are all my drill bits. I've got metric, fractional, lettered, numbered, some cobalt, some tap guides, some center drills, some leather punches, some drill chucks, some reamers, some screw extractors, and then also some of the big boys in here as well. And for anyone curious, the filament I'm using for all these holders is an eSun. I think it's like bone white. I'll have a link down below. And what I did for a little bit of contrast is on the last 1.5 millimeters, I just did a layer height modifier. I finished this off in a Polymaker metallic chrome. What I was going for is kind of like that retro futurist kind of PC vibe kind of thing. So I kind of wanted that, like, I don't know, faded beige kind of PC from the 80s or 90s. That's actually what I was going for, and I think that's what it looks like. I don't really like a lot of bright colors in any of this, and I wanted something light enough, but if I had done white, this would have looked really dingy, so something light enough, because when it gets too dark, it's hard to find tools, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I chose. Down below, I have all of my end mills. I also have my counter bore set. This is just in 2 Gridfinity holders. They're just kind of split, and I just ended up keeping the original foam insert. I've got some radius cutters over there, and then this is just kind of all the overflow of my end mills that aren't currently mounted in a holder. You know, they were not on the Avid or the Tormach. They're just kind of the overflow. I've got 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch. Now, the way I determined the sizing of everything, so right here, you can pick this up. This is a 1/2 inch. The way that you tell it's a 1/2 inch, it's written on it, and it's 1/2 inch in diameter. Same goes for here. This is a 1/4 inch tool, and you can tell it because the shank of the tool is a 1/4 inch. I'm kidding, of course, but I really don't like labeling everything because I switch stuff around so much, and I mean, you can just pick this up and that's a 1/2 inch. That's just what a 1/2 inch looks like. So I'm not really too worried about labeling all this stuff, and you always need to have some room for the labels, so it makes all the holders a little bit bigger, and it was just dumped in the drawer before, so I think this is perfectly good. I learned so much making all of this, so let's talk about that. So I think the biggest thing I learned in doing all of this is just how long Gridfinity takes. You see all this stuff online and Instagram, social media of people that have like completely organized their shop, and I don't know how they're doing it because it takes forever. What you saw here was about a month and a half of really going at it. You know, I've got 4 printers. They were running quite often. Most of the time I had all 4 running. And not only does it take a long time to print all of this stuff, but it takes a long time to organize, lay everything out, kind of form a game plan, download models or make models. We'll talk about that later. And then the printing time on top of it. So what I did is I took everything that I've printed over this whole course of organizing, threw it into a spreadsheet, calculated how much time it took to print, and then averaged it out per square, because Gridfinity are grids, right? So each one of these grids is a 42 millimeter square. So on average, how long does it take to print 1 square? So what I figured out for my models, it's going to be different for everyone, but I figured out that it was about 22 minutes per square. And it really doesn't seem like that much until you factor in how large some drawers can be. For the small tool chest, it has 63 squares, and so that equals 23.4 hours. So just under 1 day of continuous printing on one printer. And for the big 28-inch drawers back there, they were 165 squares, and that equaled 61 hours. So it takes roughly 3 days solid to fill out one of those drawers. Now, that's just the printing time. You might be thinking, well, Robert, I can use 2 printers, that cuts it in half. I can use 4 printers, that cuts it down by a quarter. Correct, but that is just printing. The amount of time it took me to find, prototype, and vet different holders and figure out how to do it, I was not keeping up with the printers most of the time. The printers were going, then they would finish, and I'm like still designing more holders. I think there's about 3 to 4 dozen different holders that I designed just in what you saw earlier. So the amount of time that this takes cannot be underestimated. It takes so much longer than you think. If you think you're going to do just 1 drawer, you know, in an afternoon, nope. You're probably going to spend the entire weekend if you're doing it specific for the tools and not just doing a bunch of bins. So in addition to the amount of time it takes, it also takes a lot of filament. It's not a staggering amount, but it was more than I initially thought. When I started this project, I ordered like 2 rolls of the primary filament and maybe 1 or 2 rolls of the contrasting, and very quickly I ran out of the primary, ordered a couple more, and I felt like I was just constantly ordering more filament. In that same spreadsheet, I also recorded how much filament in grams per square I was using on average, and it came out to about 13 grams of filament per square. This varied quite a bit. The height of the holder will obviously change how much filament you're using. Most of my stuff is relatively thin, but when you start adding the taller ones, you use a lot more filament. This ranged anywhere from between like 8 or 10 grams per square, all the way up to like 20 or 25. My average was 13, so for the small drawer, you're looking at about 1 roll of filament to fill that completely out. For the larger drawer at 165 squares, I was looking at about 2.2 kilograms, so a little over 2 rolls of filament. Now, that assumes that you are printing it perfectly, you're not having any failures. And the other thing that I always forget when I use all of my printers is that I need a roll of filament per printer. So even though I only went through about 11 rolls of filament in this whole process, you need to have 4 rolls at all time of each color to keep all 4 printers going. So as soon as one would run out, you got to steal it from another one, and then that one can't print You get the idea. So having redundant printers means you also need to have redundant filament if you're using the same color. But I was kind of surprised at how often I was having to replace the filament because, you know, the printers were running pretty much 24/7. So this one might seem obvious to some of you, but when I started this project, I thought I was just going to open up a drawer, dump everything out on the workbench, print or download holders for it, slap it back in, close the drawer, and move on to the next one. And it really didn't work out like that. I emptied drawers and found a lot of things that, you know, probably shouldn't have been in there, should have been somewhere else. Well, I should really bring this tool over here. This really should be with these other things. And that really slows you down, like a lot. I also found a lot of tools that I just really hadn't used in a long time, and it was complicated to make a holder for it because I couldn't download anything. So I started making some really hard decisions about what I wanted to keep, what I wanted to sell, and I ended up selling a lot more because it just really wasn't worth making the holder for it or having that one thing that I haven't used in years with a nice fancy designed holder. It wasn't worth the filament, it wasn't worth the time. So I found myself really thinking through what I wanted to keep and how I wanted to organize it a lot more than the actual time it took to just print everything out. And that slowed down the process tremendously as well. So in addition to deciding what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of, what justifies having a holder, what doesn't, there's also the question about how you hold it. And this one actually tripped me up quite a bit. Let's say I have some spot drills and I have a whole set of them. Well, they're not always together. I have a couple that I always have on the drill press. I have a lot in holders on the Tormach kind of permanently. I have some on the lathe. So do I make a holder for the whole set of 7 or 8, knowing that only one of them is going to be in there? Or do I just kind of keep it with the end mills? That's what I did. There's just a slot with the end mills for them. Also, like these step drill bits, right? Little Christmas trees. I have a bunch of these, and they're all from random different sets. I wish I could just go out and buy one nice set, you know, 4 different sizes and print a holder for it, but I have like 8 different sizes there. Do I just make a specific holder that is for each one of these individual ones, or do I just throw them in a tray? As you can see, I haven't figured that out yet. Making that tray might be really nice, but then one goes dull or one breaks. They're old Harbor Freights. I don't know if the new ones have the exact same geometry, then I have to remake the holder. There's a lot of these decisions that you have to make, and this really slowed me down. I still haven't figured out how to deal with my step drills. I still haven't figured out exactly what to do with my taps, my tap holders, my tap wrenches. There's a lot of things I just haven't figured out a good way to go around it, and I've even prototyped, so it takes a lot of time kind of figuring all of that out. I learned to start small. Handling all my cutting tools, all my measuring tools, and all my machinist tools all at once was probably too much to bite off at once. It has delayed so many other projects. I haven't made a video in like months, and I've got so many other things to do, and I'm still not even done with this portion of the project yet. If you tackle like one drawer at a time or one genre of tool at a time, I think that's a lot easier to manage. But my initial goal was to go through everything and just Gridfinity all the drawers, and that is just way too big of a project to tackle all at once. So I think, you know, limiting it to one drawer or maybe a couple drawers or one genre of tool makes a lot more sense, because it just takes so much time to print, to design, to prototype, and to organize everything to do it all at once. Whenever you have a fixed constraint, it's always going to be wrong. It's just kind of Murphy's Law of design. So the 42mm square size was just always slightly off for me. And I don't think that's unique to me, and I don't think it's anything to do with Gridfinity. It's just that's how the world works. For my large drawers over there, it was like 15 by 11. So I really didn't have the luxury of saying, okay, I'm going to stick to like either 3 or 5 squares. it's always going to be off. You're always going to have that one awkward row. No matter how you Tetris everything around, you're always going to have empty squares. And I've tried arranging those drawers to where it makes sense. You're just going to have weird empty spaces, and you're just going to print a bin to fit in that area. You're just going to have to live with it. In the 7 drawers I did, I think I only have 1 that fit nice and perfect. I would really love my screw extractors to be down with the end mills. It didn't work out that way. I wanted to keep just drill bits where drill bits are, just kind of like end mills and other tools where they are. It's just not going to work out like that. And when I went into it, I thought I could plan things out more and be a little bit more clever and kind of get ahead of that. But it's just never going to work out the way you want. So you just got to print the holder for the thing and then see how it all lands in the end. The last and final thing that I'm going to talk about in this video, because I just want to stop at 7, is density. If you take a bunch of tools, pile them up, open the drawer, and dump them in, you're going to fit so many tools in that drawer. And that's the problem with organization, is it always takes up a lot more space than you think, because you actually need breathing room around everything. Now, granted, I could have gone a lot more vertical with everything. I could have stacked more holders on top of each other, but I really wanted the ability to just open a drawer and see everything that was there and not have a lot of stacked things. The only places I stacked was when I just kind of have a bunch of stuff that I don't use all that often. But in designing the holders, don't try and pack as much as you possibly can into each holder, because you're really going to be limited by the grid. In the beginning, I tried to have things like diagonal and like kind of pseudo overlapping and all this stuff to try and get the grid size down as much as possible, but then you're always going to be right up against that grid constraint and you're going to be slightly over it. You might as well just go to the next biggest grid size and just deal with that and give yourself a little bit more breathing room on all the tools. They're going to be easier to grab, they're going to be easier to put back in. So when you're organizing like this, give yourself more space, use extra drawers, and just let everything have the breathing room that it deserves. So yeah, that was my experience with my first large-scale Gridfinity project. Overall, I am very happy with how everything turned out. It was just a lot more work and a lot more time than I thought going into it. It was supposed to be just one of those small things. I do have all of the models that I created on Maker World. I have a link down below. You can search for them. Everything that I created, I uploaded. A lot of stuff I did end up downloading, but you can find that link down below. I'm using Maker World because, quite frankly, printable bucks are kind of useless. They don't really get you much of anything. So I have everything on Maker World, and I have the links to the filaments down below. They're really neat filaments. They look really nice in person. I really like them. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And please tell me down below what your experiences are with your Gridfinity organizational adventures. Bye.